Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask the Cricketer. Cameron Ponsonby is calling in from Wellington, standing in front of his green screen at the Basin Reserve. We've just watched day 2 of the second test between New Zealand and England. I'm going to kick off, Cam, very quickly with one. Was that a good day of test cricket?
You know what? I'm actually really pleased you said that. I was wondering that myself because England were rattling along about 5 and over. You had Harry Brook and Joe Root at the crease, and it was like, I remember someone went, I'm a bit bored, and I was like, how are we bored of this? It's kind of we're a victim of our own kind of entertainment, like TikTok addiction, that we kind of want entertainment and kind of drama at all points forever. From a competitive standpoint, of course not. It wasn't a good day of Test cricket. New Zealand, I don't know what's happened to them. They've completely kind of fallen apart over the last 2 weeks. They were ahead of this match an hour into play yesterday. When they bowled out England out for 280, they had every reason to think they were ahead of this match again. And then we sit here today. England are 550 runs ahead, and they're not going to stop batting like that soon. They're going to let Joe Root get at least another 30 to get to his century. Ben Stokes is basically on a jolly and just seeing how many sixes he can hit. There's every chance England taking to the kind of fourth innings like a 650 run lead. So no, from a competitive standpoint, it wasn't a good day of cricket. From a fun standpoint, I think watching Jacob Bethell get 94 was pretty good at value. Seeing Gus Atkinson take a hat-trick, that was very exciting. So no, although from a competitive standpoint, bad, will I remember being at this day of cricket? Yes.
Yeah, I think it was. As you say, like in terms of the context of if we need to be always talking about the context of a series and of a test, then yeah. But if you can kind of condense the day on its own, I guess there were so many themes there that you can kind of attach yourself to and kind of get excited about. I guess if you don't bother about the wider context, we don't care what it means. We just want to enjoy it.
Never care. No, absolutely. I pride myself on not caring about anything ever, and so today, I think from a New Zealand perspective, it was really they've dug themselves into a hole with Southee, and the problem is they're basically gonna have to suffer for one more Test match before this is over. Where a very kind of key point of why this team's so different to the one in India and why they're performing so differently is if you think about the kind of 3 key performers in Will Young, Mitchell Santner and Ajaz Patel, they're not playing. It is a different team in different conditions. In the same way we go, by recognising how different playing Test cricket is in from New Zealand to India, the same has to work in reverse, where you go, maybe this is actually the same New Zealand team at home that lost to Australia 2-0, dropped a Test match to Bangladesh not too long ago here as well. They have a very, very brittle top 7 at the moment. Latham, Conway, Blundell, all really in search of runs. Then over the course of this series, you can add kind of Ravindra to that list as well. Then from a bowling perspective, you've just got 25% of your seamers who aren't up to scratch at the moment, which it feels so almost disrespectful to say about someone like Southee, because he is a phenomenal bowler who has had a phenomenal career, but he is kind of tangibly and visually just a bit slower than everyone else, a bit less lively. When he bowled his first 2 balls of this second innings and Zach Crawley belted them both through the offside for 4, you kind of winced a little and went, blimey, like, how is this going to end well? He has to have the new ball. That's when he's most effective. But you're giving England like a head start, and you're giving England kind of hydration points along their innings where they can just kind of have a little reset, have a little start again, and know that there's not going to have too much kind of fear factor coming their way. So, yeah, in the context of the series, well, in the context of the series, it's meant a lot because England have basically wrapped it all up. I think they're going to win this game, but I've been wrong before.
Well, that's why we got you on board. We're paying you the George millions to cover this series for those kinds of insights. And we're going to lose a few days of those if we can get this wrapped up reasonably quickly as well. Yeah, on a serious point, I think it was really easy to forget that some of the out of form New Zealand players who are still in the team were also out of form when they were winning as well. Therefore they've kind of been undone completely by that. Let's talk a little bit about Jacob Bethell. You've written about him today, and kind of, I guess, what this all means. we're going with wider context again, but what this kind of all means at the moment. Yes, okay, he hasn't broken that weight for a century, which the hosts of Cricket Archive, etc., will be disappointed about. But nevertheless, what's your sense of what this kind of how this might play out as far as England's long term, how they look at their top six on a long term basis?
Yeah, it's a bad day to be Ollie Pope, I'd say, because you don't only just watch the wonder kid get 94 very attractive runs at the top of the order, you then kind of nick off at the end of the day when you've only got 10 and 4 of the rest of the top 6 have all passed 50. Ben Stokes said a matter of days ago, he was like, so I just looked over my shoulder, I realised I'm really close to the England dressing room, and I was like, right, how quietly can I talk about the selection issues and the long-term future of Ollie Pope? There was, Ben Stokes said like a couple of days ago, he went, yeah, when Smith comes back, we'll see Pope back at 3. Done, dusted, see you later, no point talking about it. But that is the safest and correct answer at this time. So much changes. Someone could trip up, like walking across the road, be injured. Someone could, Jacob Bethell, for instance, score loads of runs and force their hand the other way. We just don't know. For the meantime, they're not going to commit themselves to saying, throwing Pope under the bus and say, yeah, like Bethell could take his spot, because that's very out of character for this setup. The idea is that until you're discarded, at which point you're pretty much done. We haven't really seen anyone be left out by this England team, dropped, and then make their way back in. Until that moment in time, they have you get their backing 100%, 110%, all the cliches, etc. I was talking to Steve Harmison, who's out here working for TalkSport, about this, and when I said I think Bethell will bat 3 in the summer, he kind of laughed it off. He went, no, he's like, if England don't give Pope that opportunity, they kind of discard everything they kind of stand for as a setup, where you have that safety in knowing that you have the ultimate backing from McCullum and Stokes. If that is taken away from someone when they have done something, Pope has effectively done a selfless act here. He said, yes, I'll back that down the order, yes, I'll keep 2 things I don't want to do, but I'll do it for the benefit of the team. If the punishment in effect for that is to lose your spot as a number 3 for England, which is the role you had previously, that's not the message that England really want to be giving out. But I mean, you've got a 21-year-old genius child giving the argument the other way, so I don't really know. It's very easy to say you'll stick to your morals until Jacob Bethell kind of does what he does.
Yeah, and unless we forget on Pope as well, that he obviously took the captaincy for that Sri Lanka series. Yeah. Essentially the same, let's not, when he was clearly out of form, when he was clearly, his place had as many questions over it as it does now. I know he did score 100 during the summer, but nevertheless, he essentially did the same thing there, compromised himself for the better shape of the team. You imagine that faith will be repaid. That on the same level, I don't think it would be the worst thing if Jacob Bethell has to go back and play some county championship cricket, and if it means he gets the century thing that satisfies lots of people, then fine.
He's going to the IPL. He misses the first 7 rounds of county championship, so like he won't have that opportunity. Next week's probably going to be his last Red Bull game until maybe Zimbabwe, and if RCB go all the way and he doesn't get released until that, you've then got, I know this is the case of Jofra Archer, Sussex have 2 games before the India series start, and from a Jofra Archer perspective, that is his time to prove his fitness. But from a Jacob Bethell perspective, if one suspects kind of Warwickshire on the same calendar schedule, those will be his next 2 Red Bull games in about 7 months, kind of thing, 6 months before India come into town. So, but then on the flip side, Nick, like, if Bethell has proved nothing, is that potentially he doesn't need that. He's come in and batted 3 without that first-class experience, without that first-class quantity or quality of performances, and it's quite demoralising. But he's just maybe shown it doesn't matter. I don't know if I agree with that point, but it's kind of what's happening.
No, I think we all say things we don't agree with ourselves on. So that's basically what our jobs are. We write 800 words of stuff we don't necessarily agree with, just to provide exactly. I know we're stealing and living out of it. The other obviously reasonably major talking point from today was obviously Gus Atkinson taking that hat trick, sort of adding to what's been a ridiculous year. Now, I guess we can divide it by saying that it hasn't. That, the context is not extraordinary. It was a bottom 3. It was again in a sort of very one-sided day, etc., etc. But nevertheless, an incredible way to kind of, if it means capping off a year, an incredible 6 months that he's had the start of his career. there's been lots of talk. Of course, we've heard about England building this battery of fast bowlers that they can take to Australia, but take anywhere. Do you think now that how far ahead? How much daylight is there between him and the next guy? Is he the number one now? Do we think?
I don't think he's number one. I think him and Carse are two bowlers that England are very, very happy they can then kind of build their accessories around. So you have two staples. England want these people who hit the deck, who are pitch independent bowlers, who can perform as well in Multan as they do at Chesterley Street. What kind of... Yeah, and I don't... Because we've got to remember, as you said that, like, part of the reason it was such a dominant performance is because Gus took kind of wickets 8, 9, 10. Carse had the earlier breakthrough. He's taken 4 for in this innings as well. Those two as a pair, I think England are very, very excited and content with. And then, if you've got Ben Stokes as your fourth seamer and fit, and you've got a spinner, you can then use that fourth seamer to basically style and season the attack the way you want it. Are you in England? Do you want Matthew Potts to swing the ball? Are you away from home? Do you want that extra pace option to get Jofra Archer in? If you're back in Australia and you might not want to pick Bashir for whatever reason, you have the core of the seam attack that you can then build around. I think Gus Atkinson and Bryden Carse are in that same bracket. I wouldn't say Atkinson's miles ahead of Carse at the moment. I don't know why I feel that way. I just think Atkinson's career has gone so well. There has to be an element of regression to the mean at some point. And that's not saying he'll cease performing as well. That's just saying he'll cease winning the lottery every week. He's played Test cricket for 6 months and he's done 3 things that people will dream about doing across a career. He's scored a century at Lords. He's got a Test 10 for. He's got a hat trick. It's been a wonderfully exhilarating period of time and incredible to watch and fun to watch and exciting to watch. But maybe it's just kind of my inbred kind of pessimism that I'm like, oh God, what happens if it all just like crumbles down against India and Australia and it was all just a kind of this amazing dream of this kind of like hot run of form. But in answer to your question, yes, I think Atkinson's a long way ahead of the rest. I just think the rest includes or it excludes Carse. I think him and Carse are the duo that England can see themselves kind of basing their attack around both over the summer and winters ahead.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right about that sort of element of wondering what will happen to Gus Atkinson when perhaps things don't go well. I mean, frankly, every successful sports person in the world has had to learn to deal with rebounding from moments of adversity. It will be interesting to see if that happens. Maybe it happens, I don't know, at home to India, for example, perhaps, and India have come at him hard. But we'll have to see. I mean, that will be interesting viewing. I guess will be a really good acid test ahead of Australia, where it's going to be, the challenge is completely different.
It's something I just find interesting. It's a small point and a slight difference in selection methods. So I remember when Ollie Pope was first picked as a 20-year-old, I spoke to someone at Surrey and they were saying like, Pope's amazing, but just my fear is that he's been picked before he's had a chance to fail. And how the kind of how you define the best from the rest is that ability to come again once someone's worked you out. I think Atkinson's in that same boat at the moment where he hasn't failed yet. He hasn't come close to failing. He's had a historically great start to his career. And so on the one hand, you could go take potentially a more old school viewpoint and go, that makes me nervous because he hasn't had to come back from that on-field kind of failure, as it were. But on the flip side, if you go around the England dressing room, they go, we've just picked Jacob Bethell at 21. He hasn't failed yet. And this is the way we do it. We pick them when they're on their way up and when they're cherry ripe, to use a kind of McCullum phrase. I don't know if he's ever said that, to be honest. I think he might have done. And then I guess to finish that point with Atkinson, you could say he's actually, I'm kind of contradicting what I've already said. You could say he's come through a huge amount of adversity already, kind of off the field, his stress fractures, and more personally, kind of the kind of family bereavements and family tragedy. He has achieved so much at a time when so much has been going on in his life outside of cricket that actually, if he goes through a few matches where he gets an umpher, he might be all right. So there you go. I've got 2 contradictions for you where I disagree with what I've said in the same episode. What a treat! What a treat for everyone.
Fantastic. It's like we're filming two different videos here. That we've just fused them straight together, which is fantastic. Before I let you go off into the night, and I do loathe to sort of ask you this question, but I guess it is important in the context of this test. Is that what's your sense of what conditions might be like tomorrow, overhead, etc. The local commentary team seem to be hoping, predicting, anticipating some sort of inclement weather tomorrow. What's your kind of sense of that, and what might not what might transpire tomorrow, but I guess how much might transpire?
Yeah, so I was just speaking to Jeremy Coney, who works on the broadcast here for New Zealand, and he was saying they're kind of expecting high winds as much as kind of the chance of rain, and how wind is actually incredibly difficult to kind of deal with as a bowler when you're out here because it can be so extreme. All I'd say is, if it does rain a little bit tomorrow, it's day 3. And there's day 4 and day 5 still to come, and it will be okay. So, yeah, I think tomorrow could actually be perfect for England fans if you're watching from home. Turn on the TV at 10 p.m, watch Ben Stokes be a lunatic as he tries to hit every single ball for 6, watch Joe Root cruise to a century, and then turn off and go to bed and catch up in the morning. You'll miss nothing of real note in the kind of dead hours of the day. It's brilliant. They've actually done this for the UK TV audience. It's wonderful. It's a TNT special.